And Sandy, I'm going to hand it over to you to kick us off and just tell me when you'd like to advance the slide.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm going to step in, hopefully briefly, for our commissioner, Marta Rivera, who's a little tied up right now. I am with Boston Centers for Youth and Families, and we have several other people on tonight. And I would like to just have the local Charlestown people say a quick hi, if you don't mind. Mimi, and I believe I saw Megan.
Yep. Hi, I'm here. Oh, my not on.
There she is.
There I am.
So we have Mimi here, who runs Charlestown Community Center as well as the Clarity Pool. And Megan, are you with us right now too? She may have stepped away. So Megan runs the Golden Age Senior Center. So I just wanted to mention that they're on. And so the purpose of this process is...
Oh, sorry, Sandy, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm at a baseball game right now. I apologize. Hi, I'm Megan Murray. I'm the director of the Golden Age Senior Center.
Thanks, Megan.
I refer to myself as the director because that's kind of how they understand it, but obviously administrative coordinator is the title.
Yes, it's a little bit of a wonky title. Thank you. Thank you both. So moving on, we're trying to explore options to have what we call freestanding community center in Charlestown. Right now, our facility is in a school building and we're getting very pinched for space, what little space we do have. So it would be very nice to have a full building we can control and make full use of. So that is the purpose of this study that we've been involved in since pre-COVID, but was interrupted for COVID. So now we're back on track and this is our third meeting. I think you can advance we just wanted to briefly show a slide here for etiquette purposes. If you can all just take a quick look at it. In the interest of time, we want people to limit your questions and try to keep to 2 minutes and be respectful of others. But the bottom line is we really appreciate everybody participating in this process. So we can move forward here. Is this my slide too, Brett?
Sure, Sandy, you can go ahead and go through this.
Okay, so engaged with us in this process are another city department, as well as a consultant team and a community advisory committee. So what you can see from this slide are the different roles of these groups. Some of the community advisory committee members are on this meeting today. Thank you. The public facilities department is really coordinating all of our city agencies together, providing data. Once we get way down the road to if we get there to a construction process, we have a project manager through that department, so they're very vital. And we have our friends at UTEAL that are exploring site locations, and they're keeping us on track and developing the presentation for us and all kinds of things. So we can go along here. So I touched on a little bit of this in the beginning, but we do want to work on what types of uses and activities the community would like to see in the neighborhood, identify locations, and then based on what's identified for both those, the location and what's offered, we need to figure out if a building that incorporates everything would fit into the various sites that would be available to us. So that there'll be a final report coming out of these meetings that will share all this information. Currently, we have, as I mentioned earlier, the Golden Age Senior Center, the Clarity Pool, and the BCYF Charlestown Community Center. And as I also mentioned, we're very tight on space at pretty much all of these locations, truthfully, but we'll be, that's why we're exploring a bigger building, as I mentioned, or our own building that isn't part of a school that we can offer more programming and activities in. So, hey, I gave you a little bit of a hint here. So standalone facility, like I've been saying, more programming, flexible spaces, flexible activities, and serving a wide range of people and interests. That is our goal here in this process. So is this my
I can take this one, Sandy.
Okay.
Thank you very much. That was a great introduction. And my name is Alistair Lux. I work for the Public Facilities Department. And as Sandy mentioned, we're managing this study on behalf of BCYF. And I just also wanted to quickly introduce two of my colleagues from Public Facilities who are here with me tonight. Evan Brinkman, who's the Assistant Director for Design, and Carrie Griffin, who's the director of our department, are both here. And this slide is just a graphic of our study process and schedule. And as Sandy mentioned, we kicked off this study in late 2020 and held our first meeting, which kind of introduced the study in November of 2020. Shortly after that, we did put the study on pause for a couple different reasons, but we recently restarted it in earlier this spring and held our second public meeting on April 26th. And at that meeting, we reviewed and started a discussion about the program for a new BCYF community center. And a program is a way to describe the size and features of the spaces that would be needed to support all of the activities that BCYF and the community in Charlestown would hope to have in a new community center. So we kind of introduced that program, and tonight at our third meeting, we're going to kind of recap some of that program and talk about how we've updated it recently. And we're also going to get into a discussion about our site selection process, and we're going to review a couple of preliminary site options that we've looked at. And our next community meeting, we plan to hold in early September after people are back from their summer breaks and whatnot. And then after that meeting is concluded, where we'll kind of review the entire process and talk about updates to our site selection process, we're going to issue a final report, which kind of captures all the work that we've done throughout the study, and conclude our study in October of 2022. Next slide, please. So it's helpful when talking about our study schedule and process to look at the big picture. And this slide shows what the entire project schedule looks like graphically. So as you can see, we're at the very start of a process that's going to take at least 6 years until the building is finished construction and ready to be occupied. So we're really, the point here is that we're really just at the very, very beginning. There's lots of work to be done. We're just getting started. We're at the phase in the process where it's really about gathering information, as Sandy mentioned, and it's more about exploring all or as many viable options as we can. It's not really about making final decisions at this point or eliminating any options. It's really kind of an open process at this point. So I guess I wanted to let everyone know that the goal of the study is really to present the pros and cons of all these different options that we're gathering information about. And we hope to present our final report, and that it's a very comprehensive report where everybody, both city officials and community members, are going to be able to carefully read and review the report and carefully consider all the pros and cons of each of the options that we have explored. Only once that has happened, after the study is concluded and the report will be available on the BCYF website, only then will we start to make a final decision about which site we want to proceed with. And then we'll enter into the next phase of the project, which is the design phase. And as you can see from the graphic indicating there will be further opportunities for community input during that design phase. So this is really just one of several points at which you'll be able to help us gather information, share your feedback, and hopefully contribute to a stronger project. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Brett Benson, a principal from UTEAL, who's our consultant helping us to complete the study. Thank you.
Alistair and Sandy, thank you both so much for that introduction, and thanks so much to all of you for participating tonight. I just wanted to briefly review what we presented at our last meeting in case you missed it. So in our last meeting, we launched an online survey and reviewed how it will inform the sets of uses and activities that would happen in a Charlestown community center. We reviewed how this feedback will determine an ideal building size, which in turn will identify a minimum site size to fit the building. We also reviewed some of the attributes that would help us evaluate sites, such as timeline for acquisition or adjacency to other city services, such as parks. And we're going to go over some of that information again tonight in tonight's meeting for those who missed it. But the presentation recording is also available on BCYF's website if you're interested in reviewing it. So on this slide, we're showing the many different types of uses and activities that happen in BCYF community centers, arranged from the most common at the top to the least common at the bottom. And as we mentioned in the last meeting, understanding the types of programs that happen in BCYF centers is important because each one of these takes up a certain amount of space and has specific requirements. And as we start to group these together, a building size begins to take shape. And again, the building size helps us figure out what size sites we need to find in Charlestown and helps us plan for budget. And these programs can be grouped into 4 broad categories: community and education, arts, fitness and sports, and outdoor spaces. And as I said, we've launched an online survey to gather community feedback on the types of uses and activities you would like to see in a new community center in Charlestown. And so far, we've received 287 responses, and that's great. And we want to encourage you to ask all of your friends and neighbors to participate. The survey asked respondents to identify if they live in Charlestown, their age range, and which BCYF site they use. And we're very grateful for these responses. And we're working with BCYF, and we're also asking all of you to continue to share this survey so that we can reach the broadest range of residents. So the survey asked respondents to rank their first, second, and third preference for the types of uses and activities they'd like to see in a new community center. And this helps us to tailor the building program to the needs of Charlestown in particular. So here are a few images of some of the community and education activities, which range from flexible community rooms, instructional and learning spaces like computer labs, and shared spaces geared towards specific age groups such as toddlers, teens, or seniors. And the responses so far have prioritized youth and teen rooms in the first, second, and third choices with an emphasis on flexibility. And this flexibility aspect aligns with BCYF's goals to make sure that these spaces are as useful and fully programmed as possible. And in the arts category, programs range from the specialized, such as performance spaces, to rooms with special equipment, such as recording studios or maker spaces, to more flexible art rooms. Performance spaces could include a black box theater for live performances. And we received a wide range of responses to this question, so we want to especially dive deeper into this program component with all of you tonight. Performance spaces and art rooms were the top choices, with music and band rooms making a strong showing as second and third choices. And what we'd like to hear from all of you tonight is the type of performance space that would be most useful in a new Charlestown Community Center, keeping in mind the other resources that are available in the neighborhood. Performance spaces can take many different shapes, and they range from the most flexible, such as community rooms with improved lighting and audiovisual equipment, to the more purpose-built that retains some flexibility for different types of performances, but may not be flexible for other uses, all the way to the most specialized auditorium with tiered seating, a raised stage, and a backstage. And we would love to hear more from you at the end of our meeting tonight, and we'll also be adding questions to our online survey to get additional feedback. Fitness and sports also range from the more specialized, such as indoor and outdoor swimming pools, to weight rooms or cardio rooms, to more flexible spaces such as yoga, dance, and martial arts studios. And survey results so far have focused far and away on an indoor pool as the first preference for fitness programs, followed by an outdoor pool and yoga or dance studios. Gyms tend to be very flexible spaces with a range of activities. These include elements that have specific space requirements, such as basketball courts, but also include plug and play elements such as batting cages. Rock climbing or bouldering walls may require specialized supervision. And basketball courts were very popular in the survey results, followed by indoor running tracks, which can run around the perimeter of a gym, and a rock wall, which could be located at one end of the gym. And finally, we showed an array of potential outdoor spaces that range greatly in size. On the smaller scale, there are social gathering spaces around the front entry or playscapes. Outdoor basketball courts and assembly areas have larger footprints, and athletic fields have the largest footprint. In general, the smaller spaces can be accommodated as part of the community center, while the large spaces like athletic fields would typically come from adjacency to a park or a school. And athletic fields were far and away the first choice of respondents. This will impact our site identification process, and we'll put a premium on sites that have nearby athletic fields or open space. Outdoor basketball courts and outdoor assembly areas were popular second and third choice programs. These types of programs will also impact site identification since they tend to be larger and will require a site that can fit both the required indoor and the preferred outdoor programs. And we will continue to gather your feedback to the survey so we can assemble the ideal program for a new BCYF facility. Think of this as a set of 3D building blocks that will get put together to make a building. And this information will allow us to determine a building size, the number of square feet that we need to build, and a building footprint, so how much land that building will sit on. It will also allow us to determine an ideal lot size and consider the minimum lot size required to fit the community center. So the second component of the study is to identify sites in Charlestown for a standalone community center. And we reviewed this process at our last meeting, but I'm going to repeat it again tonight for those who weren't able to attend in April. So I apologize if this is a repeat for some of you. There are 5 components to the process, and I'm going to go through each one on the next few slides. First is to determine the types of uses and activities in the building. The feedback we received to the survey explained a little bit earlier will help shape this step. Next is to determine the size of the site we need to fit a new community center. And we're going to need to be flexible and think creatively in this step, given how scarce land is in Charlestown. For example, we'll look at a multi-story building as an option to fit all the activities and uses in a small footprint as possible, or we might not find the perfect site and we'll need to consider how important access to the athletics fields are. We'll also look at existing standalone BCYF sites like the Clarity Pool to determine if there's additional capacity available for new programming. We will identify suitable sites in Charlestown using our own data and feedback gathered through this community process. There's a question on the survey where you can share your ideas about where a new community center can be located. These can be both public or private sites, and we're looking for as many ideas as possible. And once we have a good data set of sites assembled, we'll evaluate the relative cost and timeline of building on the site. For example, the shortest timeline would be a city-owned parcel or building that is underused, an empty lot or an outdated building. A longer timeline would be a publicly owned parcel that has a complicated acquisition process, turning a park into a community center or building near the waterfront, for example. And the longest timeline will be private parcels, and these might be the most expensive as well, considering land costs and potential cleanup costs. And then the last step in the evaluation process is testing in 3 dimensions, how a new BCYF center can fit on the sites that get identified. This is a step where we put together the 3D Lego blocks to see if a building will fit. And each site is unique, so it's important for us to test how a building could fit on each of those sites. And as I mentioned, there's a part of the survey that allows respondents to suggest areas or particular sites in Charlestown. We're listing the most popular suggestions to date on this slide, which includes the current BCYF site at Charlestown High or along Medford Street and in the Navy Yard. So we have identified a first round of sites that we want to share with you tonight to get your feedback. These are both publicly and privately owned sites, and they're shown on this map. We're also showing the 3 existing BCYF sites in Charlestown, as well as BPS sites. There are 2 other important lines on this map. The first is this red line, which shows the designated port area. Sites within this area will require legislative approval for non-maritime uses. And the second is the blue shaded area, which indicates the future floodplain when taking into account sea level rise by 2070. Since many BCYF community centers are also sheltering sites in cases of extreme weather, we need to carefully consider how potential flooding impacts the siting of a community center and the access to it from all over Charlestown. So we have 4 publicly owned sites to review with everyone tonight. And before I show them, I want to emphasize that these are preliminary options. We have not performed an in-depth analysis of them, and there's a lot of work to do as part of the study. The selection of a particular site is not part of the study. Our goal is really to identify as many suitable sites as possible. So I just wanted to put that out there to manage everyone's expectations. So the first site we've identified is the Clarity Pool, which is BCYF's outdoor facility on Bunker Hill Street. On the positive side, the site belongs to BCYF already, so there's no site acquisition process. It is adjacent to an existing playground and basketball courts, so it addresses the desire to have access to outdoor athletic space. Some of the challenges include the construction in a park will require review if the Commonwealth's Article 97 requirements apply, and the surrounding Doherty Park is also landmarked. So the sections along Bunker Hill and Medford Streets are the least altered from the original Frederick Law Olmsted design. And the next site we looked at was a parking lot next to the existing community center site at Charlestown High School. This site is adjacent to several playing fields, tennis courts, and an outdoor track, so it checks the box for connections to outdoor athletics programming. There's also the potential to have a connection with the existing school and community center facilities. The smaller site will require a multi-story building, but based on past experience, it's big enough to comfortably fit all of the desired programs. And as a multi-story building, it can be raised up above the existing ground level to preserve some parking underneath. This site is also within and surrounded by the future floodplain. Raising the building above the floodplain addresses the safety of the building itself, but accessing the community center from the surrounding flooded neighborhood would still be a concern. Excuse me. Next is Peter Looney Park, next to the O'Neill Ice Rink on Union Street. A new multi-story community center could be located on the site of the existing park and a portion of the open space along the side of the rink building. These 2 areas in combination are just big enough to fit a typical community center basketball court. And the city owns the land behind the park that fronts on Austin Street that is currently used as 2-hour parking. This area could be converted to a new playground to replace Peter Looney Park. And unfortunately, that area is too long and narrow to fit a community center. So there's no way to fit a new center and the existing park on that part of the site. The site does not have nearby athletic fields, though a new park could fit a tennis court or a half-court basketball hoop. And lastly, we have the parking area and yard at the side of the Prescott School between Pearl and School Streets. At 18,000 square feet, it is the absolute minimum size to meet the programming needs of the community center, and it will need to be a tall multi-story building. Its location in the geographic center of Charlestown is both a strength and a weakness. On the strong side, it's very convenient for the many residents who live all around the site. On the negative side, it makes for a very tight fit for a large building in a dense area. Like some of the other sites, we could preserve some of the existing parking on site by fitting it underneath the community center. And given the orientation of the hills, the parking could be in a half basement. So next, I'm going to review 5 privately owned sites we have identified that could be suitable for a new community center. Again, I want to put this disclaimer in flashing lights for all of you. We have not approached any of the owners of these properties, and we have not made any recommendations about these sites to the city. We have simply found these sites to be suitable based on their size and location, and we want to get feedback from all of you tonight on these sites. So the first site is at the northwest corner of Charlestown, where Bunker Hill, Main Street, and Rutherford Ave converge. The site is largely privately owned, with a small corner owned by the BPDA and occupied by an EMS station. At 35,000 square feet, it is likely large enough to fit a community center on 2 or 3 floors. And as a largely empty lot, there is reduced displacement of existing uses. The site is within the future high tide floodplain when taking sea level rise into account. So mitigation measures will have to be considered if this site is explored further. Next is the southern end of the Schraft Center site that is the current subject of a large development proposal known as 425 Medford Street. We understand from the developer's filings with the BPDA that they have proposed some space for a potential community center, so we've put this site on the list for consideration. The site is located within the future flood zone, so the community center would benefit from the measures the developer has proposed for the overall site. And if this site proves to be favorable, it would require much further exploration with the developer about the size and access needs for the community center, the timing of construction relative to the development, and so on. And the same concerns apply to the northern end of the Schraft Center as well. One benefit of this end of the center is the adjacency of Ryan Playground with its outdoor athletics facilities and waterfront access. So moving south along Medford Street, the parking lot at 295 Medford Street could be suitable for a new community center. The site is currently a parking lot owned by the Boston Autoport, and it's adjacent to the future Mystic Greenway. It's a block away from Charlestown High School and the athletics fields there. And the site is within the designated port area, so a non-port use would require legislative review, but it could act as a buffer between the industrial waterfront and the residential neighborhood up the hill. And then lastly, Year's End Parcel 7 is in the Navy Yard next to Spalding Rehab. It is a large site that could potentially be subdivided to make room for a new community center to meet the public destination requirements of the Navy Yard Waterfront Activation Plan, while also leaving room for future development as well. It's directly adjacent to the waterfront path along the channel that connects to Menino Park. And the site is in the flood risk zone, and its location in the Navy Yard makes it relatively remote and difficult to access for most of residents in Charlestown. And with that, I'd like to thank all of you for your attention and open it up to questions. Please feel free to raise your hand in Zoom and we'll call on you to unmute yourself. Again, just given the potential volume of questions, we'd like to ask you to limit it to 2 minutes if possible. So give us a moment to get organized and we will start there. So Tara Lally, it looks like you have your hand raised. You should be able to unmute yourself now.
Hi, Tara Lally, long-term resident of Charlestown. On my 4th house here, my 4th kid, 18 years strong, 2nd dog. The reason I say that is because that means I've touched most of the nonprofits, all the sports fields, every program you could think of. I'm having a hard time speaking. I really am, because I don't usually toss around in these community meetings what I do for a living at all. But for the last 10 years, I do nothing but work with financial advisors and private investment funds and developers. The biggest developer in Cambridge, you might know them, MIT. I'm only bringing this up. I do not any longer work for MIT, but the reason I'm bringing this up is because absolutely not one location or plan sounds like one single viable option, both for revenue for the city, financially sound. I understand that BPS and the community centers, I think that there's a friction there, and I totally understand the reason that you might need to separate. Financially speaking, it makes absolutely no sense. We are the hub of Boston sports because of our facilities at the community center that we currently have. I have kids in private school. We currently have better facilities than some of the best private schools in the greater Boston area. If we cannot work to maintain those, we are hopeless. We have a better pool than Dexter Southfield, one of the best facilities in the state. We have field space on the waterfront that attracts the entire city to play sports there, and all we need it to have is be returfed. It is very simple. We have kids waiting out the door for swim lessons. We just don't have enough swim instructors. I go to these classes and they're empty. I just don't understand the space constraint. Please enlighten me. I want to know what the space constraint problem is. I want to know why we need to relocate this. What's going to happen to all this outdoor space? You are talking about building a building on parks when all we ask for is open space parks. And I'm going to stop before I lose my mind. Thanks. You're welcome to mute me.
You know what, Brett, I'll take this. Hi, Tara. No, thank you for your comments. And I don't think it's, I don't think we're saying we couldn't do something with where the current facility is. I think we're saying, you know, we were tasked to look at space needs and what would be the community's ideal location. So I don't think, and I'm not going to speak for a BCYF, I don't think anyone's opposed to that. You know, the upgrade of the existing facility in Fields. You know, I think we were just looking at all possibilities that would fit the ideal community center based on the space needs.
All right, thank you, Tara, for your comment. And try and go take these in order. Joanne Massaro, I think you were next. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. I agree with Tara that should be explored, number one. But also another area that I didn't see in any of your suggestions is the land that is going to be, or the sites, the parcels that are going to be available when the Rutherford Avenue Sullivan Square project finally gets started and completed. There are several parcels in the Sullivan Square area that will be available. So when you were looking at the one where the EMS and then the private property, there's actually, from what I'm remembering, contiguous to the EMS site is, or very close to it, is one of these parcels that is going to be available. So I think, I mean, I'm not sure why that you haven't looked at that, but between the transportation department and the BPDA, they should be able to give you the square footage and the location of those parcels to be considered.
Hi, Joanne, this is Alistair. Thank you for that suggestion. We certainly will look at those parcels. We're just sort of getting started. So we're doing this on a rolling basis, and certainly as suggestions such as yours come in, we plan to look at all the suggestions that are made. So that one's, we've kind of been thinking about that one a little bit, just haven't had a chance to study it in depth yet, but we plan to do so. So thank you for that reminder. And also, I think I wanted to just mention that we've been working closely with BPDA Plan Charlestown. Jay and Trish are here tonight in the meeting, and where they've been, you know, it's been very helpful to coordinate with them. They certainly have filled us in on the work that they've been doing, and very receptive to what we're trying to do as well. So thank you to both Jay and Tricia, and to you as well, Joanne.
Can I just make one more suggestion? There is a parking lot on the other side of Sullivan Square by 93 there. That is a parking lot. I think the BPDA owns it. Used to be, I think, either Public Works or DND owned it, but that BPDA has care and custody, and they lease it to another entity that leases it, rents it out as parking. I think that site should be also considered. I mean, it's not very attractive now, but hopefully when Sullivan Square and Rutherford Avenue are redone, it will be more accessible.
Okay, we'll certainly see if we can locate that one as well. If you have an address or other identifying.
It's between Marfa Way and Main Street there. It's in the middle. There's some MBTA land as well there. It's kind of a no man's land right now.
Okay.
I don't have the address, but I would assume that someone from the BPDA would know.
Definitely. We'll look into that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Joanne, thank you for your comment. Next on my list here, Dan, you have your hand raised. Please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, interesting stuff here. Is there a reason why it has to be so centralized into a single building? Can it not be more dispersed under different avenues, for no better a term? We definitely have land issues in finding a site that's big enough to support everything that you'd like to have here. I don't think it's really that possible. Independent of that, the YMCA has, I think, slowly trying to exercise themselves out of the community. So that's going to be private or under some sort of health club program of some sort down in the Navy Yard. So that site, the pool's to be available, but it won't be publicly available. It'll be privately owned. As it technically is now, actually. Then, independent of that, we have the Little Mystic Channel area. And as a thought process, I've been looking at that space and seeing what we could do for that to make it more useful for the community as a whole. And one of the things that we have to deal with from a climate resiliency standpoint, as well as protecting, making the boat launch that currently exists there possible, is to transfer the boat launch over to the Schrafft's build site and dam up, with an adjustable dam. It doesn't have to be solid. The channel space, and make that into a water space that's held at ideally a set level, and the current boat launch made into a swimming space. It could even be saltwater. It could be fresh water, it could be saltwater, either way. And then making the parking lot area more as a youth-centered area for the young. So that was a direction I was sort of thinking of. It's a thought program. It's not necessarily, this is not real. And that might be a way of moving some things in a space that might be more appropriate. I'm not saying that's an answer here. I'm just saying is we need more green space, or we're never going to get the parking lot space down by 275 Medford Street there that you pointed out. I don't think that really is suitable as a structure there, but it's possible, I guess. One of the things that I'm also been working on is a microbus solution for the community to move around. So that was a thought process, was to make the hub station that we desperately need for that to work there. But it could be incorporated. I don't see any reason why I couldn't do both. So those are just simple thought ideas. I have to think about this a little bit more. But you have a tough nut here. And I don't think you're going to be able to do it one site. Maybe the Main Street school site there, the Edwards School, which is closed now, and then, well, partly closed. So maybe that would be a place that could be taken over as an inexpensive retrofit. But I want to see something, but I don't know how you're going to do it in one space. Thanks.
Dan, thanks for your comments tonight, and wanted to point everybody to the survey link in the chat, where you should be able to, if you have further thoughts after this meeting, post them there, and we read every single comment that we get through there. So thanks again for your comments. Joanna, you have your hand raised, so you should be able to go next.
Thank you, and thanks to whoever from your team posted the list. I do think that's important, it's my opinion. And I also think it's notable and worth noting that less, or a fraction of 1% of Charlestown's population is here, which is, you know, just too bad, because it's such a great opportunity to engage on this very exciting project. However, I agree with what Tara said about, you know, let's fix what we have. I also feel very strongly, and I know I'm not alone, that there is no justification for removing green space, particularly mature trees, of which we have very few.
Knew it.
Did you know it, Dan? Well, anyway.
Sorry, I'm so alarmed. Sorry.
You were right to know it. And I'm glad that I'm here to say it, because I understand the connection between trees and breathing, trees and heat islands. I mean, it's not rocket science, guys. It's just pretty basic stuff. So I don't need, you know, you can make fun of me, but I stand behind it. We should not be cutting down trees or building over parks for any reason whatsoever. So I can't wait for this to get done, but I really want the 11 people from Charlestown to know that, you know, I am going to push back very hard, and I won't be alone on building on where there are trees today. We just can't, we don't have any. We're number 2 as far as minimal canopy in all of Boston. So yeah, that's it.
Joanna, thanks for your comments. And please do pass around that survey link to all of your neighbors. Every response helps, and it really does impact how we shape this study process.
Joanne, I wasn't laughing at you. I was laughing at the fact that we do have a problem, and I do agree with you. We just can't make it as being the most strong position. It has to be done in scale.
All right, thanks for that, Dan. I'm just going to put you back on mute. And Tim McKenna, or Hannah McKenna, I'm sorry, you have your hand raised. You should be able to unmute yourself.
It is Tim McKenna. I haven't updated that from a parent-teacher conference. Sorry. So I just had a comment that I think you have presented like some really good viable options. I'd love to, as I mentioned, send an additional consideration your way. Just a little feedback on the survey itself. It felt like it somewhat led the witness into providing feedback. There wasn't enough, in my opinion, area for free commentary. So I think people maybe had limitations around what could be possible. You know, I think one thing that I may have suggested on the survey was looking at how it could dovetail with the new urban agriculture initiative that the mayor announced. I mean, that wasn't even a selection. I didn't, you know, because it's not current programming is my point. So I'd just call that out, that if there's an opportunity to expand the scope beyond what's typically done under the guise of BCYF that actually suits, you know, additional needs within the community, then we should consider that within the scope and the effort.
Great, Tim, thanks so much for your comments. I really appreciate them. If other members have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll get to them. If you prefer to ask a question through the Q&A feature or the chat, please do so, and we'll go through those as well. I see Kimberly Mahoney, go ahead. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for putting together a very well thought out presentation tonight. Appreciate all the detail put in and time put into looking at the various locations throughout the community. And I know that, you know, this is a very positive thing for the community that you're doing, that the city is doing. With that being said, I just want to kind of zero in on back to kind of the options that were presented. And I really like the option that sits behind the current community center. I think one thing that people fail to be mindful of is the fact that we're not only servicing young people we're servicing are most vulnerable, our elderly, which is why Megan from Golden Age is on the call. You know, and we're also, the youth that we are serving are mostly from the housing development. And I'm thinking more of accessibility to the building and thinking about how I think that the community center should stay in the core of Charlestown. I think that the location behind the high school seems to might function better. But again, in the different locations, like for example, like down by the Peter Looney Park, I mean, that's a sacred ground. It was named after Peter Looney. But it's also in a really, you know, a neighborhood, houses all around. I don't know if that would work. Same with the Bunker Hill Park as well. And then if you turn into, you know, you get over to Rutherford Ave and you think on the other side of that, it's, I mean, we have to make this accessible for people, especially our elderly and our young people who really kind of have to be on their own sometimes. And in the community center, like I've always said before, has been, was wonderful to me when I was a kid. It's where I grew up. It's made me the person I am today. Without those various programs, I don't know where I'd be, but I do know that making this as accessible as possible to provide the programming that is needed in the community, especially during this critical time. Right now, I mean, for example, you know, we're all talking about the shootings that happened. Young people need a safe place to be and to go. And I think that right in their backyard, in that neighborhood, if we can make it so that it kind of remains in that area, I think that would be awesome. Thanks again for your time, and I appreciate all the hard work you guys are doing.
Thank you, Kimberly, for your comments. They're much appreciated. Erica Walsh, you have your hand raised. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm a community member. I've also coached down the community center for basketball. I've also helped out with the summer program down there. Mimi does a hell of a job doing what she can down there. She's been down there for years. Everybody loves and respects her. But I will say, I don't think a lot of the people on this call are aware of, you know, the restraints she's under when it comes to timing and having to deal with the high school, you know, community program. The community center comes second to what the high school has going on. And that's just how it's always been. You know, she does her best and she does what she can, obviously. I think a center, but I agree with Kim, a center maybe down that end behind the community center would work, maybe like with overflow going into the high school and using it when we could. I think it needs updating. I know the turf, the softball field, all that stuff needs updating. And I'd like to see, you know, updating with the Clarity pool. And if we maybe could save money, maybe just hire more people. I think that would work, get more, you know, community kids in there. Again, as Kim said, you know, it's in a perfect location. It's right by the projects. You know, again, another vulnerable population of kids. They need somewhere to go. They need somewhere safe they can be with people they can trust. And, you know, that's it. And I think a lot of people feel this way as well. And I think when the, you know, wheels start rolling, you will have more say from people in the community, because I know a lot of people are, you know, backing this and wanting this. And thank you for your time and your patience with what's going on in the chat. Have a great night.
Thank you, Erica. Thanks for your comments. Again, if you want to comment, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll be able to unmute you. If you prefer to just write your question, feel free to do that either through the Q&A or in the chat, and we'll be happy to answer that as well. And again, their link to the survey has been posted in the chat. If you have thoughts after the meeting, please feel free to log on to BCYF's website and make your comments there.
Brett, would you be able to go to the site where the current site is with the property and back, just to take another look at that?
Yep, hang on one second and I'll navigate over there, Carrie. Here it is.
And that's the current parking lot that we're showing it on?
That's right, here. Yeah.
I mean, I think we could look at that in terms of having some partial programming within a new standalone facility that's BCYF. And then look at you know, maybe some upgrades to all the surrounding fields. That might be a possibility. That way you could probably maybe, because we have heard extensively from the Dorchester community that we're doing this site, the BCYF community, and Charlestown, that sites within schools do not work in terms of programming. You're very limited. And then in BPS takes the priority. So that's why we were looking at sites outside of a BPS facility.
Mimi, you should be able to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, I just like to say that that piece of lot is the high school's teachers' parking lot. And they park 2 and 3, they block each other in. You can't even park in there during the day. You can't even drive into that lot. They are up on the sidewalks. They block each other in. If you took this spot, the teachers for the high school would have nowhere to go.
No, it's just, we're looking at possibilities. So obviously
Yeah.
we would coordinate with BPS. However, we can always build something where there's underground parking or something, you know, obviously that's more money, things to consider. So yeah, I mean, I think nothing's off the table. This is why the community process is so important. If this is determined that the adjacency to the school and to the fields is important to the community, you know, we can look at that and look at some possible underground parking. You know, there's always a way, but it's really about, you know, the community and the feedback. You know, you got your input. Your input is critical to this process.
We have a couple more hands raised here and just a few more minutes left in the meeting. Tara, you should be able to unmute yourself. I just want to ask for those of you who are repeat commenters to please try and keep your comments short, just so that we can make sure that there's enough time for everybody to have their comment. Thanks.
Yeah, so I want to, I think we're all in agreement that BPS is rebranding, rebuilding. We all know what's going on, right? So it seems, having had a child, I have to give an example of, I have a 6th grader. She started swimming with Zeus a couple years ago, pre-COVID. She swims for the varsity at her high school now. She's a 6th grader. Okay, so my point is that the Community Center of Boston staff is the best I've met of any facility in Charlestown, although I will say my kids don't do the Boys and Girls Club, so I don't know them that well. So I'm not comparing them. So my point is that it seems that, unfortunately, BPS needs you guys. And so is there a possibility that, because you guys know what you're doing, I know from experience, and the BPS has the facilities, that there's a better way to use this funding for a whole new facility to expand the BPS building facilities that we have and do more joint programming? I get that there might be physical expansion needed in certain areas, but there is no doubt that BPS needs all the help they can get. And the city has these 2 programs that are running parallel. Why aren't they merging? I mean, these are the same children. It's not at one set. I mean, actually, that's not true. It's 2 sets of children, because our children can't all go to the BPS school as it is right now. We would love for them to, but it basically is the same set of children. Why aren't we merging this and spending the funds that way to expand our current facilities and programming with emergent, that's not a word, I just made that up, but you get what I'm saying.
Hi, Tara. I will tell you that my department is doing a study with BPS. We do a lot of work with BPS, where our department is running the Green New Deal for BPS, and we are also doing an extensive study which will look at a K through 6 and 7 through 12 program. And Charlestown obviously will be included in that study, so we can look at that in partnership with BCYF. But that is getting underway. So we are looking at that, and to look at, and there'll be a robust community process with that, for that process too. So we will be looking at the school districts throughout the city.
Shannon Fitzgerald, you have your hand raised. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm sorry, I think I have a pretty bad connection, so please interrupt me if you're having trouble hearing me. Again, thank you for having this meeting. I just had a couple of comments. My first one was just in terms of some of the proposed sites. I agree that keeping it down in that general area makes way more sense. I didn't really even fully understand the one near the Warren Prescott, and the Peter Looney Park is a very well-used park of babies and toddlers, and there's a school that uses it. So that one, and again, it's pretty densely populated there as well. So I have a hard time imagining that. But I understand that, you know, you guys are just looking at all options just to have these kind of discussions. So I just wanted to give that feedback. My only other feedback was on just the meeting itself. I think you guys did a really good job, and I know I did, with the CMA reaching out and letting people know about this meeting. I think it's just, I think it's time to try to have these meetings in person. I think that if you had this at the existing community center, you would have a huge turnout of people from the community. Everyone is very committed and invested in the community center in Charlestown. I think the Zoom is a real limiting factor for a lot of people. And I think we really need to think about that being how we move forward, since we are really reopened in a lot of almost every other way. So just that, I think you get a lot more from our membership in terms of showing up and providing feedback.
Great, Shannon, thanks so much for your comment. Mimi, you are next on my list. You should go ahead and unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I don't know what happened.
Okay, no problems. Dan, you have your hand raised. Please go ahead and make your comment.
Yeah, the parking lot at 255, that seems possible. I've been looking through the drawings a little more. I think that might be the best place, but not necessarily it alone. I think you're not going to get enough benefit out of the one space. That's my 2 cents.
Great, thanks Dan for your comment. We're getting to the 1 hour mark, and we want to be respectful of everybody's time. If you do have any last comments, please feel free to raise your hand, put them in the chat. We'll keep it open for another minute or so here. Oh, Carol, go ahead and you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hello, my name is Carolyn. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Terrific. I worked for community centers for a long time. I saw Sandy Holden's picture, so we go way back. How are you, Sandy? I am a fierce component.
I am good. Nice to hear you.
Thank you. And I have seen the fruits of labor like no other. And I mean that quite seriously. We have touched lives. We made a difference. You need a solution. You need it now. And all this, I understand process. I understand it all. What I don't understand is shootings while you're at a graduation. Are you kidding me? You need a space. You need it now. The delay is silly, if not dangerous. And let's go. Let's go. So as somebody who grew up there, graduated from Charlestown High, gave my heart and soul to community centers, this is crucial. And these kids' lives and all that is offered is should be without delay. So that's my comment. And in full disclosure, Mimi Wren is my sister-in-law. Thank you.
Carol, thank you for your comment. And I don't see any more hands raised. We've hit the 1 hour mark. Thank you again for everybody for attending and for your comments. We take them all very seriously. Again, want to make sure we push out that survey to everybody possible. And thanks again for your time tonight, especially on such a beautiful evening.
Hey, Brett.
Go ahead, Carrie.
I just want to say that for the suggestions of meeting in person, I think maybe we should do that for September when we gather again with all the information. And we'll also maybe have some BPS representatives there too. So we'll advertise this heavily within the BPS community and the BCYF community and the neighborhood community. So I think that's a good suggestion to have this in person.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.